Hello YouTube, hello fight fans, and hello to my fellow MMA hipsters. I'm actually recording this up in Thailand at the moment on a self-fulfilling MMA journey, having actually finished a month in Japan, which is a fairly long time. So yeah, out here in Thailand, getting my ass kicked every single day, which is great fun. Now, let's recap some fights. Having seen that recent main event, UFC Fight Night 143, which is actually the first event to be featured on the new UFC and ESPN deal. Let's talk about some of those interesting fights on this card. First fight to talk about, Donald Cowboy Cerrone up against Alexander Hernandez. This one is at 155. Of course, Cerrone coming down from welterweight after facing Mike Perry previously, and Alexander Hernandez coming off his victory against Oven Mercier, I think it was. You probably remember Alexander Hernandez from starching Bernice Dariush, and he actually, he came out in this fight with the same, the same strategy. You can usually shake Cowboy pretty hard in the first round. He's a notorious slow starter, and he's especially susceptible to the straight punches, especially from southpaw. And Alexander Hernandez, being a guy who loves to switch stances so much, was looking to take advantage of that from the start, pressuring Cowboy, making him circle. Actually, Hernandez did make Cowboy circle, but his ring cutting was actually quite bad. There was a lot of instances where he just let Cowboy off the fence, really just let go of the pressure. Yeah, Cowboy didn't really do any of those clever pivots either. It's not like he fainted one way and went the other. Hernandez I think he failed to capitalize on just successfully cutting his opponent from the fence. I think he would have had so much more success if he started using leg kicks as Cerrone circled out, or body kicks that kind of crowds him towards the pressure zone that Hernandez wants him to be in, or even hooks to the body. That helps because generally when you circle away from the fence, the head is not an easy target, but the body is. Hernandez threw loads of straights, hoping to catch Cowboy, but Cowboy pivots. Cowboy actually lands a takedown as well, intercepting Hernandez as he came in with a kick and caught him on one leg, which is what you want from a takedown. So yeah, after Cowboy weathered the storm, he began to take over, and the story of this fight is really that intercepting knee that Cowboy really loves, which works so well against opponents who, like Hernandez, comes in low with punches. Comes in with a low posture and over the top with punches, and that step-in knee works better if your opponent's coming towards you and you step in to the knee rather than you go stepping up to your opponent with the knee, because it is a move that you should really only use on a counter. Otherwise, you run the risk of getting knocked out by an overhand, which is what Derek Lewis did against Alexander Volkov late last year, if you guys remember that one, where he was getting absolutely worked over for every single round until that big overhand as Volkov tried to initiate with the knee without any setup. So yeah, that's why you don't do that. Anyways, back to what we're talking about. Hernandez ate a few of those knees, and that actually took the gas out of him, as you see him like slow down visibly throughout the rounds, and the finish came in the notorious Donald Cerrone fashion, which is set up by hiding the right head kick behind his right straight, and as his opponent Alexander Hernandez slips to the outside of Cerrone's right straight, he's actually putting his head into the path of Cerrone's head kick. He then follows up with some ground and pound, and the referee stops the fight. Yeah, with that win, Cowboy actually has the record for the most wins in the UFC with 22, the most stoppage wins with 16, the most knockout wins by head kick, which is at 7, and tied for the most knockdowns landed at 18, and the most Fight Night bonuses at 16. And yeah, those numbers really tell you what Cerrone's character is all about. Yeah, always a fan favorite, always a personal favorite of mine. So congratulations, Donna Cerrone, you deserve it all. Paige VanZant up against Rachael Ostovich. This is the fight that all the boys wanted for obvious reasons. Paige VanZant, of course, coming off a nasty injury. I think it was a broken arm. And Rachael Ostovich, as we all know, is the victim of that unfortunate domestic violence incident. So mad respects to her. Takes a lot of courage, a lot of grit to even train and take this fight after everything that happened to her. So yeah, hats off to her. Now the fight. What happened during this fight? Paige VanZant opens up with a lot of high kicks, and Rachael Ostovich, she always had that big right hand, and this time showed something interesting. It was a right hand into an outside trip, kind of like what Fedor used to do, where he throws his rear hand, landing in either on the opponent's face or in the opponent's guard, using the momentum of that power hand, allowing his rear foot to shift to behind his opponent's foot, creating the position for the trip, which is exactly what Rachael Ostovich did in this fight. So Rachael got Paige down, and she was actually looking for she got a hold of a guillotine, but she was kind of stuck in half guard. She needed to pass into full guard in order to secure that guillotine, arc her back, and really put it onto Paige. But yeah, couldn't pass the half guard, had to give it up. Created the scramble. Paige rolled for the ankle lock, and Ostovich had to roll with it before kicking with her other foot and shrimping out to stand up. Something interesting I noticed, in between rounds, Paige's corner was actually calling for less high kicks and more low kicks, which I thought was quite strange, because Rachel was having great success with her rear hand, which packs a lot of power, and having to kick low means you're more susceptible to the rear hand over the top, so which I thought was quite strange. Round 2, Rachael lands the exact same Fedor-esque takedown, climbs onto the back of Paige. Before she can sink the hooks in, she got too high and Paige shakes her off. Paige then takes Rachel's back, positions herself high with her full weight on the elbow, and takes the armbar. I'm actually running out of time here, so I'll touch upon 2 more fights. Next up, the dubious main event, Greg Hardy versus Alan Crowder. Not going to touch upon too much about Greg Hardy's background. I think we all know and have read enough about him over the news. Let's just focus on the fight. So, Greg Hardy obviously coming up from Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series, having had 2 professional fights, making his UFC debut. Alan Crowder has 10-3 on his record, coming off that recent loss by, I think it was TKO punches, to Big Pretty, the guy that Bam Bam Tuivasa hates. What do I say about this one? I mean, the dudes, they were just swinging wild at each other. Alan Crowder, throughout the fight, tried to move away from Greg Hardy's power hand, circling towards his right hand side, and standing in a southpaw stance, looking for the opportunity to counter with his own power hand, and slipping Greg Hardy's loopy punches, changing levels, look for the takedown, look for the clinch, drive Greg Hardy into the fence, basically wear him out and test his power in the later rounds. Greg Hardy, to his credit, came into this fight bringing heat. He was slinging leather. He was going for it. He was going for the knockout, trying to get Crowder out of there in the first round, like he did with his other 2 opponents. As he was slinging, Crowder changes levels, catches Greg Hardy on one leg, drives him to the fence, takes him down, maintained top side control, and we see Greg Hardy's ground game is it's really not up to scratch. There was no hip bumps, there was no shrimping, there was no framing to create space, none of the usual things you would see for a side control escape. Yeah, towards the end of the first round, Crowder had full control of Greg Hardy. Thought it was a good idea to actually pull guard and grab a guillotine. Fucks up, ends up on the bottom of Greg Hardy, which is what you don't want to do. but takes no damage, and we move on to the second round. Round 2 was very similar to round 1, except for a brief part where Crowder gets fired up by trash talking, and the crowd responds, then the commentators respond, and just when this fight was getting good, it was over. Hardy lands a illegal knee on Crowder, as Crowder was trying to recover from a failed takedown. He had one knee on the mat, which classifies himself as a down opponent, and therefore you can't knee a down opponent. Actually, before Hardy landed the knee, I somehow had a feeling that he was actually just gonna knee him, and then he just did it. Like he just kneed him right in the face. I mean, with Greg Hardy's background and his reputation, he didn't need that. I believe it was an accident, but lots of people give him shit over media, and he's copying a lot of hate for this, and he will cop a lot more in the future. But yeah, that's the life of Greg Hardy. We'll see what happens to him in the future. But for now, let's move on. Alright, main event. Lasted for 32 seconds. No one saw that coming. I didn't see it coming. This breakdown's probably going to last a lot longer than the fight itself. A lot of questions were raised about Dillashaw's weight cut. That was the big question throughout the week. How healthy is TJ? Did he cut too much weight? How's his hydration levels? Will he be able to take a shot well at 125? And I'm not sure if those questions were answered in that 32 seconds. I mean, it really depends how you look at it. Let's talk about that after we talk about the fight. Right, so both fighters comes out. Henry Cejudo in the southpaw stance, TJ Dillashaw in orthodox stance. So open stance engagement with Henry Cejudo pressing TJ Dillashaw in a karate-like stance, the same stance he used in his last two fights, which was a complete surprise to me, as in his last two fights, Cejudo, whilst in that same stance, was working outside of his opponent's reach and making his opponents come to him rather than pressing the action, looking to step back and counter as his pressure draws reactions from his opponent. Very similar to the game plan of one named Conor McGregor. TJ felt that he was being pressed towards the fence. He explodes off it with a double jab overhand. Cejudo ducks under it, shoves him back towards the fence. TJ loses his balance, slips on the ground. Cejudo follows up with a head kick, which TJ blocks, but that head kick actually forces TJ to circle towards his right hand side. And Henry Cejudo, seeing that reaction, punches to where TJ is going to be and clips him. I think he was behind the ear, something similar to that position, and drops him. Followed by some hammer fists, TJ tries to reach for Cejudo's far leg with the intention to hit a stand up, but as he is standing up, you gotta realize that when you stand up without clinching your opponent properly, or when you stand up trying to use your hands as base, that's when you're gonna get caught. And that's what happened to TJ. The second time he got dropped, he had one hand on the mat as base, exposing his entire side, and Cejudo uppercuts him back down towards the mat. Because TJ had one hand posting on the mat, he's occupying his hand, which could have formed a part of his guard. And the third time he got dropped, I believe he was already well and truly rocked at this point. Tried to control Cejudo's biceps as he stands up, but his arms were too loose, and Cejudo uppercuts him again, sends him back down towards the mat. TJ tries to reach for Cejudo's far leg again, but the referee steps in, and that was the end of the fight. Now, lots of people were contesting this stoppage, including, of course, TJ himself. He was very vocal about that throughout the post-fight interview and also the post-fight press conference. He was saying that he was more rocked during the first Cody fight than this one, but lots of people were saying that it was a good stoppage. Well, in my opinion, it's it could go either way. We will never know what would have happened if TJ was allowed to go on. It was a fact that he was still moving, reaching, actively trying to wrestle Henry Cejudo, but at the same time, he could have eaten more shots. So what would have happened if the referee didn't stop the fight? I guess we'll never know. And now they're talking about a potential rematch at 135, which would definitely be interesting to me, because in 30 seconds, you can't really see the game plan of both guys. You can't really see too much. you can't really see the full arsenal, basically. And doing it at 135 is eliminating that weight cut issue that TJ has. But I think TJ said it himself that he wants this again at 125. I guess just to prove a point. Yeah, never know. Cejudo actually seemed like the bigger guy coming into this fight. He also said it himself that he weighed about 140 pounds the morning of the fight, which is a fairly massive weight cut. Yeah, he's a big dude for the division, that is. And now if you look at Henry Cejudo's resume, he just beat Mighty Mouse, which UFC has been marketed as the number one pound for pound fighter of all time, and also TJ Dillashaw, which many believe is the best bantamweight of all time. So now you have a real issue on your hands with the 125 division getting scrapped. Henry Cejudo also, of course, has that Olympic gold medal, so he's now fairly marketable. So interesting to see what Dana does with that division. Yeah, that concludes the first episode of this, I guess you can call it a podcast. Yeah, which is really a Fight Night recap. Let me know how I did in the comments below. Let me know if you guys want to listen to more. And definitely welcome to give me any pointers about this. Anyways, thank you for listening. Like, share, subscribe. Also follow me on Instagram at MMA Degree. That's where I post a lot of my contents as well. Yeah, check that out. Meanwhile, I'll see you guys next time.